In this video, I'm gonna talk about a case that has outraged Iraq. The story of 22-year-old YouTuber Tiba al-Ali, who was a victim of the intolerance of those who should have protected her. This case is a recent one. It happened in 2023, and in this video, I have brought all the information available to the public. Tiba was born in Iraq in the year 2000, a country situated in the heart of the Middle East. Growing up, Tiba had dreams and aspirations like any other young person. However, her life took a dramatic turn when she made a life-altering decision. When she was 17 years old, in the year 2017, she embarked on a family trip to Turkey, a neighboring country of Iraq. Little did she know that this trip would change the course of her life forever. During this vacation in Turkey, Tiba developed an immense love for the country. As the family vacation came to an end, Tiba made a bold decision. She refused to return to Iraq and instead chose to stay in Turkey. It was a difficult choice for her, as it meant leaving her family behind. As a result, her family had to return to Iraq while Tiba remained alone, living in Turkey. Sources suggest that Tiba's strained relationship with her family, particularly her father and brother, influenced her decision. The family didn't approve of her choice, and this further deteriorated their already troubled relationship. In Turkey, Tiba found solace in her new surroundings. She embraced the vibrant city of Istanbul, the former capital of Turkey, and decided to document her experiences through a YouTube channel. This vlog-style format allowed her to share her daily life in Istanbul, giving viewers a glimpse into her world. Her channel quickly gained subscribers, and she started gaining recognition on the platform. Soon, Tiba fell in love with a man named Muhammad. Together, they began recording videos, utilizing this opportunity to build their presence as digital influencers. Tiba's channel showcased a diverse range of content. She shared photos on her social media platforms, giving her followers a visual diary of her experiences. Her videos portrayed a vibrant and joyful life, capturing everyday moments, like a surprise birthday party she organized for Muhammad, and the places they explored together. Tiba and Muhammad's relationship blossomed, and they planned to get married by the end of the year. Their love story captivated their audience, who eagerly followed their journey. In 2023, when Tiba turned 22, she made a heartfelt decision to visit her family in Iraq. Even though she had already planned a trip for later in the year, her mother called her. Her voice was filled with longing, expressing how much she missed her daughter. Touched by her mother's words, Tiba couldn't resist and decided to advance her visit to January, eager to embrace her family once again. During this trip, Tiba also had an incredible opportunity to support her country's team as the 25th Arabian Gulf Cup was taking place, and one of the games would be held right there in Iraq. Sticking to her plans, Tiba embarked on her journey to Iraq in January 2023, leaving her fiancé behind in Turkey, eagerly awaiting her return. On the 31st of January, with a mix of excitement and nervousness, Tiba arranged to meet her mother at a close friend's house in Baghdad. It was a chance for mother and daughter to reconnect, reminisce about old times, and create new memories together. The anticipation in the air was palpable. Tiba specifically chose to meet her mother at her friend's house, wanting to avoid any potential clashes with her father. Due to their complicated relationship, she preferred not to visit her family's home, hoping to keep the reunion as peaceful as possible. Little did she know that this seemingly innocent decision would have devastating consequences. As Tiba arrived at her friend's house, she was struck with utter shock and disbelief. To her surprise, her entire family was waiting for her there. Not just her mother and father, but a gathering of relatives. Confusion filled the room, and Tiba's heart sank as she quickly realized that she had fallen into a trap. A sinister plot she never could have anticipated. Against her will, her relatives drugged her, leaving her defenseless, and forcibly took her to the province of Dinoa, where her family resided. The distance from Baghdad was over 160 kilometers. When Tiba finally regained consciousness in her family's house, her world crumbled around her. Emotions ran high, and a heated argument erupted between Tiba and her father. The exchange of words grew more intense with each passing moment, further straining an already fractured relationship. Exhausted and emotionally drained, Tiba decided to retreat to her room, seeking solace in a moment of quietness. Little did she know that the horror she had just experienced was far from over. As Tiba fell into a restless sleep, her father, driven by his anger and consumed by a twisted sense of honor, entered her room. In a brutal and unforgivable act, he attacked her, suffocating her until she stopped breathing. Tiba, defenseless and trapped, never had a chance to protect herself. Tragically, her young life was cut short, a promising future stolen away in an instant. Tiba's father made the shocking decision to voluntarily turn himself in to the police, confessing to the unspeakable crime he had committed. Yet he did so with the knowledge that Iraq's legal system lacked specific laws against domestic violence, which meant he was unlikely to face appropriate punishment for his actions. In his statement to the police, Tiba's father justified his horrific act by claiming that he took his daughter's life to cleanse the family's honor. According to him, Tiba had brought shame upon the family by becoming a digital influencer and expressing herself in a manner that he deemed inappropriate. These misguided beliefs were echoed during an interview with the country's media. However, the Iraqi media chose not to disclose the identity of the father, the perpetrator of this horrible crime, to protect the privacy of the family. Saad Maan, the spokesperson for the Ministry of Interior of the Iraqi government, revealed that Tiba and her father had a long history of family disputes. He also mentioned that the police had been called to their house multiple times before Tiba moved to Turkey in an attempt to defuse the escalating tensions. Nevertheless, some officers expressed surprise, as they had never anticipated that the conflicts between father and daughter would culminate in such a tragic outcome. The spokesperson didn't provide further details about the nature of these disputes or how the police had dealt with them in the past. However, he emphasized that the government could not be held responsible, even though the country's laws predominantly favored violent individuals and discriminated against women. Speaking on condition of anonymity, a police source stated that the family disputes had been ongoing since 2015, when Tiba was just 15 years old. At that time, the police didn't pay significant attention to the potential consequences of these conflicts. A few days after the crime, conversations between Tiba and her father, which had occurred months before the tragedy, surfaced. In these recordings, Tiba's father expressed his anger about her leaving alone in Turkey. In turn, Tiba accused her brother of taking advantage of her when she was younger. A friend of Tiba shared these recordings on social media, and women's rights activists gathered and preserved them. Human rights defender Hannah Edward verified the authenticity of the recordings, revealing that one of the reasons Tiba chose to stay in Turkey instead of returning to Iraq was her brother's abusive behavior during her childhood. Tiba also claimed in the recordings that her family was aware of her brother's actions, but did nothing to stop them. The Iraq Observatory of Human Rights also confirmed the authenticity of the recordings. In some of Tiba's social media posts, people who knew her commented that she had been receiving threats from her family for some time. Nonetheless, she agreed to meet her mother at a friend's house in Baghdad because, despite everything, she still cared for her. This clearly indicates that her family had set a trap for her, making this crime premeditated. The crime against Tiba sparked significant outrage, not only within Iraq, but also among all those who became aware of the case, especially considering the threats she had received from her own family in the months leading up to the tragedy. Numerous Middle Eastern media outlets labeled the crime as an honor killing. In February of the same year, protests erupted in Iraq demanding justice for Tiba. Activists from various backgrounds gathered to call for laws against domestic violence and to draw attention to the escalating violence against women in the country. A large protest was organized in front of the Baghdad court. Allah Talabani, a former member of the Iraqi parliament, stated that Iraqi women were held hostage by archaic customs due to the absence of effective laws and government measures addressing domestic violence. The crime against Tiba also triggered protests on social media platforms, with people demanding justice. In response to the tragic event, the hashtag #Tiba Ali spread widely across social media and Iraqi communities. A few days after the crime, security forces prevented approximately 20 activists from demonstrating outside the Supreme Judicial Council of the country. In response, they decided to protest on a road leading to the building. Some of the protesters held signs demanding an end to violence against women, while others insisted that Tiba's father be held accountable for his actions. In a statement, a United Nations mission in Iraq condemned the abhorrent crime and urged the government of Baghdad to enact a law explicitly criminalizing violence against women. The crime against Tiba reminded Iraq of another tragic case involving a woman named Malik al-Zubayti, who was forced by her husband to set herself on fire in 2020. Also, in 2020, in a city bordering Iran, a 58-year-old doctor took his wife's life because she refused to allow him to sell land that was in her name and keep all the money for himself. Despite the protests, there were also those who defended the crime against the young woman. On social media, for example, one man wrote that women should behave or face the same fate as Tiba, while another user criticized those who were upset about the crime against a girl who abandoned her family to live with her boyfriend. Tiba was not the only female influencer in the country to lose her life. A woman named Iman Sami Magdid, also known as Maria, was killed by her relatives in March 2022. Her crime, like Tiba's, was also described in local media as an honor crime. In Iraq, crimes of this type, committed by family members, are frequent. Available data suggests that honor crimes have been an ongoing and recurring phenomenon under successive governments in Iraq. The UN criticized the crime as a regrettable reminder of violence and injustice and called for Tiba's father to be held accountable for the act. The police in Iraq are still investigating the circumstances of the crime, but the country's penal code indicates that there is not much room for prosecution, and therefore, Tiba's father will probably never answer for the crime. In some of her videos, Tiba herself even spoke about the threats she received from her family members. Although, in most of her videos, the young woman always seemed happy. In some of them, it is possible to see her worried and distressed about these family issues. In one of the videos, she even becomes emotional when talking about it. I didn't find information about the wake and burial of Tiba Ali, and I also didn't find whether Muhammad, the young woman's fiancé, spoke about the tragedy. Protests against the crime, although on a smaller scale, continue to happen. Protesters hope that the international repercussions of the case will somehow force the conviction and application of a fair sentence for Tiba's father, even with the great possibility of impunity. According to them, it is never too much to fight for justice, especially for someone who is no longer here to fight for herself. So, that's it for today. Thanks for watching until the end. Best wishes, and I'll see you next time.